On the program right now, our friend Julie Gunlock of the Independent Women's Forum. Julie, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
It's my pleasure. Have you eaten any meat today, by the way?
Of course. Are you crazy?
Yeah, just wondering if the vegans got to you last night, if if you were swayed by their oh so persuasive arguments.
Oh, hell! Can I say that? Hell no.
Sure.
No, I had eggs for breakfast. I had a big salad with some ham in it for lunch. So, yeah, making enemies every day.
I was thinking this morning at about 6:30 as I was outside, and it was about 16 degrees or so, and I'm breaking the ice on the water for the goats and the chickens and the hogs. How cruel I am to animals. I was just, I was thinking about it. I mean,
yes. Well, should we explain?
I did set it up a little bit, and I do have to thank Robert Beezer and Jen Jackson. There were a lot of folks who joined in the discussion with my militant vegan. But you had a militant vegan as well. I did. I was on Twitter last night. A good friend of mine. She's the wife. She's a nurse and the wife of a wheat farmer in Canada. And some vegans were militant vegetarian vegan types were beating up on her. And her husband doesn't even raise animals. He's a wheat farmer.
He's a wheat farmer, and they were and they're so stupid that they just assume all farmers, are dairy farmers and wheat farmers and corn farmers and soybeans, and they raise hogs. I mean, there's zero distinction. I mean, they don't understand there are hundreds of different kinds of farmers who all use different products on their crops, and who some are in dairy, some are in as you are in hog farming, and then some do crops. And she was trying to explain this to them, and this person was just incredibly rude, and so I defended her, and then I got beat up on. So it was just a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, it is. But this is the thing. I mean, I was struck, and you probably engage with these folks more than I do. But one of the things that I was struck by in trying to have a conversation and a debate with this guy last night was that, there was really no getting around, there was no real engagement, right? There was just a regurgitation of talking points. And when you explain that, no, I don't see cows as human beings, and you're not persuading me, then there was, it was all of a sudden, well, now it's bad for the environment. To eat meat, and you know what? You're gonna destroy the planet by eating cows. To which my response is, okay. So you say you can't eat cows because we're destroying the planet. So what do you propose to do with all the cows that are here right now? What are you supposed to do with the pigs? What are you supposed to do with the chickens? What they're actually calling for, and I never got to this point last night. But what they are calling for, what militant vegans are actually calling for, is an animal apocalypse.
What?
Because as soon as we stop eating meat.
Well, that's true.
Why are we taking care of the cows? Why are we taking care out of the goodness of our hearts? No, they're there.
It's interesting. I work on a lot of ag issues, and I hear a lot of people complaining about, it's so terrible. Conventional farmers, they give their animals antibiotics. Well, when I'm sick, you bet I want antibiotics, okay? And I want my children to have antibiotics, because it would be cruel if someone had an infection that could be treated and they could become healthy again with antibiotics. It would be cruel to let them suffer, and yet we're supposed to raise animals without the use of any kind of antibiotics. We are not supposed to. And this is what's so frustrating to me, is that actually when animals are treated, for instance, let's say a dairy cow gets a metastasis, okay, and they have to treat that with antibiotics. That cow is taken off the line and cannot be put back on the line until first her metastasis is gone, and then she has to be completely rid of that antibiotic. They test that cow to make sure the milk has absolutely zero trace of antibiotics in that milk, and it's at that point that she can be put on the line, and then the milk is further tested. Individual batches are tested, and then it's all put together on a big tanker truck to be sent off, and then that is also tested. So, I mean, conventionally produced milk. This is the milk that that you can use antibiotics on and other things. It gets such a bad rap. This is a perfectly good product. It comes at a very much lower price than organic milk, and again, I just don't understand this line about not using antibiotics on animals. It is cruel if an animal has a metastasis or any kind of other infection and you don't treat it. So again, these sort of talking points that these sort of militant vegan and vegetarian activists have really don't make a lot of sense when you look at the facts.
Well, all right, and we could go down the rabbit hole. We could talk about large scale agricultural production, but people would fall asleep, quite frankly.
Hey,
Julie.
did you just call me boring?
No, I'm just saying that most people don't probably want to hear about large scale agricultural operations.
Oh, come on, I love that stuff. All right, let's talk about sledding.
I know, but no. But what I was going to say is, just real briefly, is that look, I think there's certainly room for a debate and a discussion about how we're raising the food that we eat. I mean, my attitude is always be mindful of the food that you eat. But again, there are plants. There are studies out, Julie. I think we've talked about this. Celery can hear itself being eaten. I mean, this is in order for us to eat, something has to die, whether it's vegetable or animal. That's I think something that maybe we all need to keep in mind.
And look, I don't want to go on and on about boring old agriculture issues, but look, I agree that there's room for discussion, but unfortunately the discussion has been hijacked by radical environmentalists, and I mean, and the federal government is totally ceding to these people. I mean, we've got a Dietary Guidelines Committee that has decided to put the environment on the agenda. So it's no longer about healthy eating; it's about eating responsibly for the environment. It is such a bunch of baloney. I mean, we're going to have now. They're considering grass-fed beef and line-caught fish. I mean, this is the kind of advice that Americans don't need. That is extremely expensive way to eat. What we need to tell people is eat lean beef, eat lean cuts of meat, have lots of vegetables and fruits in your diet, but not tell them that they have to, eat the way Hollywood eats or eat the way the very wealthy eat, like the way Whole Foods sells their food. That is precisely the wrong kind of advice, and it's the kind of advice where people just tune out. They're like, I can't afford to eat that way. So I agree that there's room for discussion, but unfortunately, the discussion that's happening in Washington is the wrong discussion, and it's been hijacked by the very people who spread lies about agriculture.
All right, and you mentioned the new dietary guidelines. This is something that you and I have discussed previously, and we don't actually have the final guidelines out yet, but we're getting these sort of leaks about some of these guidelines here. And as you say, there was a story at the EAG News today about how Department of Agriculture's Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee is expected to base new recommendations for a healthy diet on foods that are not only good for human health, but also the environment. Associated Press reporting the advisory panel has been discussing the idea of sustainability in public meetings, indicating that its recommendations expected early this year may address the environment. So now it is not about eating healthy food for you, it's about eating food that's healthy for the planet.
Yeah, it's really dangerous. Look, now I'm not kidding you. I watched some of these hearings, the Dietary Guideline Committee, because that's how much of a loser I am. I'm serious. I watched this stuff, and then I wrote about it for National Review. Okay, and one of the things people need to understand is Kate Clancy. Okay, she's billed as this food systems consultant. She explained to the Dietary Guidelines Committee that it must integrate environmental concerns into the guidelines. She used phrase like environmental friendly food choices, low impact food choices. She said we need to look at things with an ecological perspective. I mean, don't forget the DGAC in considering the dietary guidelines considered things like animal rights and fair trade and things that, look, these deserve a hearing. We can talk about animal rights. We can talk about fair trade. We can talk about, I think, getting rid of insects was one of the things they're talking about. I mean, these are all fine. These are worthy topics, but I don't know that they really have a place when we're talking about how to guide people to make good food decisions, nutritious food decisions. And again, it's because this administration sees everything as political. Mm-hmm. Everything is an opportunity to build in these liberal concepts. And this is, I mean, the Dietary Guidelines Committee in 2010 made some. They go over it every 5 years. In 2010, they made some really good changes. I still managed to criticize them. They did make some good changes, and it's the hijacking of these things that really make. Look, it's hard. I think we know in this country. You know, everybody's. We've gained a little weight in this country, and it's hard to make good food decisions. What this committee is going to do is make it even harder by telling people they have to buy really expensive food. I mean, that's absurd, and it's not true. And so there has been a lot of outrage by dietitians and people who really follow this stuff closely and realize that, environmental issues and nutrition, it often leads to advice, like I said, that just is going to be really tough for the middle class and particularly people who live at or under the poverty line to adhere to.
All right, listen, we've only got a couple of minutes left here, and I've got to ask you about this because there is snow on the ground in Washington, D.C., absolute gridlock, I know.
Yes.
But kids are excited, I mean, the school's getting out here. They're going to be sledding if they're allowed to. There was this story, Julie, and we should not be surprised in our litigious society today that more and more cities are banning sledding, and yes, it's thanks to lawsuits.
Right. Now, look, and this is the kind of thing that most of the coverage of this is, gosh, those wimps in this city governments that are banning this. These city government officials are shaken in their snow boots, literally, because they are so afraid of lawsuits. Because in this country, we have become so litigious that if we look at a big, long, steep hill and think, should I sit on this small plastic coin and launch myself at 30 miles an hour down this hill? And then we think to ourselves, but if I get hurt, well, that's my responsibility. No, if I get hurt, I'm going to sue the city. And this is legitimately what happens. Lenore Skenazy talked about it at Reason Today and on her own website, Free Range Kids, talking about how she mentioned a few cases. I mean, this has actually happened. Cities are being sued. So this is the thing that bothers me. I mean, I agree. Look, it annoys me that these city governments are doing this and that they're sort of pandering to this. But if we want more freedoms in this country, if we don't want a nanny state, then we have to support tort reform and other legal reforms that help to sort of give judges the right to get rid of these stupid lawsuits right out of hand. I blogged about this morning that Rick Perry last year, he passed some wonderful reforms in Texas, which is why a lot of businesses go down there now, because it's, they're not going to get sued because someone slipped on, ice 3 miles from their business.
Right.
This is really important. So I just want to make the point. Look, I'm all for criticizing these city officials, but I think they're really, a lot of cities are bankrupt, a lot of cities are struggling, and they're really afraid of people, suing them for millions of dollars.
Oh yeah, I think directing your ire at the officials is ultimately put in the wrong place, because as you say, they are responding to a system here. I mean, ultimately, much like these school districts that have adopted these zero tolerance policies. Now, it's true, you may be able to get the districts to move away from these zero tolerance policies if you're able to exert enough public pressure. Much like I'm guessing again, if there's a lot of public pressure on these cities to say, hey, come up with something, some sort of liability waiver, some sort of opportunity for us to use these hills to sled, you could do so. But you're always going to be fighting to get that done, as long as the mindset is, I hurt myself on a piece of city property engaging in an activity that I chose to do so. Right. Give me millions of dollars.
You and I have talked about the zero tolerance policy at schools and how ridiculous it is, but what's so depressing and demoralizing, I think, for us when we talk about these issues is often it's the parents demanding action. I mean, I remember a couple times you and I talking about it and you going, who in the heck are these parents that would, demand something be done for this unreasonable, some kid, makes a gun signal with his hand. And
Save my snowflake. I know. Listen, Julia, I'm sorry, I hate to cut you off, but the music means we're almost out of time. Thank you for coming on the program, and we will talk to you again very soon.
All right, thanks for having me on.
All right, Julie Gunlock, you can find her online at the IWF.org website.